Hey everyone, welcome back to Path of Exile, and in today's video we're gonna be talking about a Tectonic Slam Chieftain. Now, if you recall correctly, in the last video I said that we were gonna do a cast on crit Chieftain, but that idea kinda failed, and it failed relatively hard, which is why we are playing Slams today. I spent an entire week playing around with build ideas, but nothing was sticking until I decided to go for Slams, and for that the Chieftain was the option, which meant releveling a character because I deleted the last Chieftain. Yes, I know, that was pretty smart of my part. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel, otherwise a rating and a comment helps spread the video to the masses. This video is being recorded live, which means that if you want to skip this commentary portion and jump into the gameplay, you can do that by following the timestamp on the screen right now, or, you know, by the timestamps down in the comments below, or in the description below, or the divisions that YouTube is gonna give the video. So with all of that said, let's talk about the gear the character is wearing, and for that the first thing is the weapon. We're using an Oni-Goroshi, which is gonna give us fist damage to attacks per level, which means the higher our level, the higher the DPS the weapon is gonna be able to put out. And also because we get Hair Embrace when we ignite an enemy. We're always dealing fire damage thanks to being a Chieftain and thanks to Tectonic's Slam conversion, and we're also converting the rest of the physical damage to fire, which means we're always getting Hair Embrace. And Hair Embrace is gonna give us fist damage as extra fire, or rather, you know, that, fist damage as extra fire, movement speed, attack speed, ignite, freeze, chill, and stun immunity. And in general, this weapon is pretty useful and synergizes nicely with Tectonic Slam and the Ascendancy that we're playing as, which is the Chieftain. For the gear portion, let's talk about the jewelry first, because we have negative mana cost of skills in every single piece of jewelry. That is because we want to spend as little mana as possible, because we have no mana leech in the tree and in our gear. So by getting the mana cost of the skill to be as close to 1 as possible, so that we still get inspiration charges whenever we use the skill, is absolutely mandatory. Besides that, the first ring has life, accuracy, elemental damage with attack skills, resistances, the mana cost, and mana regen rate. The amulet also has life, accuracy, mana regen rate, resistances, and elemental damage with attack skills, and we want mana regen rate a little bit because we have rage thanks to a lethal pride with Akoya, which is getting socketed over here, and it's replacing Unwavering Stance for Chainbreaker. Chainbreaker is giving us rage per second, and increases and reductions to mana regen also apply to rage regeneration rate, or rather apply to rage regeneration rate, which is why we want mana regen over here, and a little bit more if you can get it on the jewels on the tree. Pardon if that came up because, you know, neighbors are kind of weird sometimes. I don't know if that came out on the recording. Anyways, coming back to the recording, the other ring has life, mana cost of skills, flame ability on hit, lightning res or resistances in general, fist damage to attacks, and if possible dexterity. We are not building towards the dexterity side of the tree, which means we want as much dexterity as we can possibly muster, which means any dexterity that you can get on the gear is pretty useful. Otherwise, you're gonna have to level up additionally, or additional levels, in order to get dexterity over here and maybe something over here. For the chest, we are using an absolute monster of a body armor with life, enemies that you kill explode, and 10% chance to gain a frenzy charge on hit alongside chaos resistance, and, you know, 6 link, white sockets, astral plate. This I crafted myself. It originally didn't come with the chaos resistance, it had something else which I was able to take off, and I am pretty happy where it sits right now. It still has some things that I don't have any use for, like the increased dexterity or the fist reflect, but removing the fist reflect may end up removing the enemies you kill exploding their life as fist damage, which is also physical damage, and that's just gonna break my item, which is why I kept it there. And the increased dexterity, sure, it isn't as useful, but at the end of the day, having it there is not the end of the world, which is why I didn't remove it. Crafting something like this should be relatively easy using the garden. Maybe the white sockets not so much, but, you know, If you can do it, I don't see why not. But I do absolutely recommend getting a Explodey chest with the Frenzy charges. Next is the helmet, and we are using a helmet that has Tectonic Slam deals 40% increased damage as an enchantment, life, resists, accuracy, and since my helmet is Elder Influence, I rolled for Conk Effect for the area damage that also applies to Tectonic Slam. If you do not have the chance to get a Elder helmet, a Warlord helmet with increased elemental damage or negative fire resistance to nearby enemies is also pretty useful. But the Tectonic Slam increased damage enchantment is absolutely mandatory. Also, the amulet is anointed with Panopticon, and Panopticon is a node that is giving us increased effect of the buffs granted by the active Ancestor Totems. Since we have an Ancestral Protector and Ancestral War Chiefs at all time, that means that we get both of these guys bonuses at all times, and Panopticon is buffing the bonuses that these guys have. Panopticon may as well be the best node that we can get in this build. Moving on to the gloves, we have spike gloves with life, fist damage attacks, accuracy, resists, and a crafted damage during any flask effect. Optimally, this would be Warlord influence for either a frenzy charge or increased melee damage. You know, a frenzy charge, personally I think that would be better because we have frenzy charges thanks to the jest, but the melee damage will be nice as well. Otherwise, doing the exact same thing as I'm doing, or maybe you know, increased damage while leeching, that's also pretty useful. For the belt, I'm using a Darkness Enthroned with 2 jewels that have life, fist is extra fire, and attack speed. Personally, I think that Darkness Enthroned is the best belt that you can be using in any build right now, besides Stygian Vice, even though this is a Stygian Vice too. But getting jewels that are pretty close to being best in slot are mandatory so that we can justify using a Darkness Enthroned instead of any other kind of belt, which is why I recommend getting things like these guys. If you can get armor or fist damage to attacks, fist damage to mace attacks as well, that'd be super great. Moving on to the boots, we are using two-tone boots that have Tailwind and Critical Strike, and even though we took Elemental Overload and even though we don't really need the Critical Strikes as often, thanks to Inspiration, thanks to the crit chance on Oni-Goroshi, we have 20% chance to deal a critical strike, and that is enough to sustain both Elemental Overload and Tailwind. Tailwind is gonna give us attack speed, and as you noticed by my short bursts of slams, we are attacking as fast as possible, and thanks to the frenzy charges and Tailwind, that means that we're gonna attack hella fast, and we absolutely want that. I also forgot to mention I'm using a Lightning Golem, which means even more attack speed. So yeah, life, resists, movement speed, the Tailwind, and if possible, damage penetrates elemental resistances as an enchantment. For flasks, a Lion's Roar, Cinder Swallow Urn, and a Wise Oak. The Cinder Swallow Urn enchantment is whatever, really. So finally, for the skill tree, we're gonna rush towards Elemental Overload. We are also going to go and take Call to Arms. That means we're gonna get an Endurance Charge or a couple of Endurance Charges whenever we walk, thanks to Enduring Cry or War Cries being free, and we can cast them as we move around. We're using Balakos Storm Embrace because that means we get an additional Endurance Charge, and we get an Endurance Charge for every second after we used a War Cry recently, which means we have 4 Endurance Charges every single time we War Cry. We get 15% more damage if we lost an Endurance Charge in the past 8 seconds. That also counts for consuming Endurance Charges, and Tectonic Slam consumes Endurance Charges, so that means we get that bonus to damage at all times. We're also taking Ramako's Sunlight for the chance to ignite and the penetration, and Hinekora Death's Fury for the Ash on unique and rare enemies. And finally Tassalio for the fire resistance, which is gonna allow us to get as much not dexterity, accuracy, and what's the other thing? Chaos resistance. So yeah, for cluster jewels we want Evil Eye and Lord of Drought. We're only using 2 cluster jewels with 4 passives or 5 passives at most. Both of them are the same thing. Evil Eye giving us increased damage against cursed enemies, and Lord of Drought is giving us Flame Ability, Curse Effect, and Area of Effect. Besides that, we want elemental damage wherever we can get it. some accuracy and attack speed over here, movement speed as well, some mana regen over here. Our Watcher's Eye has Fizz's extra fire while affected by anger, and attack speed while affected by precision. We have both of them over here, precision and anger, and we're also going to be using Herald of Purity and Blood and Sand. You know, all of them linked to an Enlighten so that we can sustain this aura setup. For the skill setup, we have Tectonic Slam linked to Inspiration, Fortify, Multi-Strike, Awakened Melee Fizz, and Elemental Damage with attack skills. I know that Close Combat is a stronger DPS, but I used Close Combat and I feel like Close Combat wants me to be hugging the enemies, and I personally do not like that, which is why I changed to Awakened Melee Physical Damage. And besides that, Awakened Melee Fizz has 10% chance to intimidate enemies on melee hit, which means that's, I think, stronger than Close Combat in the end. So yeah, that's gonna be the character setup for now. This video is right now 11 minutes long, which means that's long enough, and if anything, I'm gonna be putting the POV down in the description below. Any questions, I'll be happy to help. And now it's time to go check out that gameplay. So again, if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I think I've covered pretty much everything else. If anything, you can ask me in the comments and I'll be happy to help you. So with that, all of that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a nice start of your week, and I'll catch you again on the next video, hopefully later down this week. So yeah, peace out.